Hey guys, welcome back to another impressions video, and today we're going to talk about Heavenly Sword for the PlayStation 3, one of the exclusive early titles that the PS3 saw in its life cycle. I believe this game was released in 2007. It was developed by Ninja Theory, and it's essentially somewhat of a God of War clone, if you want to call it that. It's essentially a hack and slash, beat 'em up type of action adventure game. That, you know, like I said, it came out early in the life cycle of the PlayStation 3, and it's a interesting title because it came out in a period of time where the PlayStation 3 was basically the laughing stock as far as that particular generation. The 360 was enjoying an early release with a pretty good lead in terms of sales, and then the Nintendo Wii obviously exploded into popularity with Wii Sports. So the PS3 was kind of left out in the dark. Several reasons. Obviously, there were not enough exclusive games that were appealing to people out there, and obviously the price tag of the infamous $599 debacle. So again, this game came out in a period of time that it didn't really benefit the game, but I do have to say that the game itself did not help the cause either, because the PS3 at that particular period in time needed strong titles that were standout. And Heavenly Sword is not a bad game, quite the opposite. It's actually a very enjoyable game, but the problem is that at the time when it came out, it did not offer anything new or anything fresh, if you want to call it that, because the game, again, feels very much like a God of War type of hack and slash game. So nothing new in terms of gameplay, nothing spectacular. So the game, I believe, went under the radar by a lot of people, and it wasn't until later in the game where Sony decided to release games like Uncharted and Demon's Souls. I believe those were like the first two exclusive titles that started pushing the system and really made a name for themselves. So Heavenly Sword got lost in the shuffle, unfortunately. It's a good game. It's not great, and like I said, it doesn't offer anything new, but it's a very enjoyable title that, in my opinion, is worthy seeking out for the game, especially nowadays where you can get this for like dirt cheap at GameStop. But enough of that background overview of the game, and let's get to the actual story, which I'm not going to spoil anything. You guys know me, but essentially the summarized version of the story is that you play as Noriko, which is this warrior, this red-headed warrior right here, and the game revolves around the story of the Heavenly Sword, which is this legendary weapon that was used in ancient history to perform this battle between like evil and good, and good used the Heavenly Sword to put evil away, and ever since then the sword has been protected by a particular tribe, I believe, which is involved. It's part of Nariko's family, protecting the Heavenly Sword. But the game happens in a period of time where this evil guy, or the antagonist of the game, King Bohan, is basically trying to conquer the entire, and all the lands, and exterminating all the tribes that get in his way. So early in the game, Noriko, basically, in order to stop King Bohan and his troops to exterminating her tribe, she makes use of the Heavenly Sword. And the catch is that whoever uses or wields that weapon is destined to die. You can only use the weapon for so long before you die. So Noriko, she makes use of this weapon, and she's basically bound to die. So you have to make sure you exterminate King Bohan and his armies before that happens. And that's basically the story in a nutshell. Obviously, more things happen along the way, and but the story is interesting. I thought nothing spectacular, but it was pretty interesting. Now, as far as the gameplay, which is, in my opinion, where the game kind of stands out a little bit, sure, it's your typical hack and slash, your typical kind of beat 'em up game, where you have your combo attacks. You can tap your square button, your triangle button. You can try different combinations, and different combos will come out of that. But one of the cool things that I liked about the gameplay in this game is You can have like long range attack, medium attack, like powerful attacks, and weak attacks. And likewise, you can have you can block weak attacks and strong attacks by the enemies depending on what color their attacks are. I know it may sound kind of confusing, but when the enemies are performing a particular attack on you, you'll see like this colored aura surrounding them that basically warns you what type of attack the enemy is going to perform. So, you know, based on that very small time frame that you have to push the right block or evade button in order to block the enemy's attack or evade the enemy's attack, and so forth. So the game, instead of being a brainless, mashing button fest, the game does test your skills and your reflexes by having that system embedded into it, which I thought it was kind of cool. I haven't played anything like that before, so I thought that was a cool feature, And likewise, when you're attacking, you can have weaker long-range attacks with your heavenly sword, because the weapon basically transforms, and then you can have your stronger attacks and things like that. So in that regard, the game is a little bit different than your typical hack and slash games. Now, gameplay wise, also this wouldn't be an early exclusive PlayStation 3 title without some kind of gimmicky implementation of the 6-axis controller. There are portions in the game where you control this other character called Kai, which is Nariko's friend, and she basically she uses a crossbow, and she's basically kind of like a sniper, if you want to call it that. And the sections where you play as Kai are kind of cool because they offer a variety in terms of gameplay, but the problem is that the implementation of the gimmicky features of the 6-axis kind of ruin those sections. You basically have to control the arrows on this like first-person point of view, and by tilting the 6-axis controller, you can control basically the path of the arrows, but the controls are not very refined. It's very frustrating. It's sometimes when you turn left, your arrow completely like dives down. So you have to have a good sense of not only left and right, but up and down, and depth basically. So those parts were extremely frustrating. And to top everything off, there are parts where Nariko, where you play as Nariko, and she has to like shoot cannonballs to destroy certain items, and those sections also have that 6-axis implementation, which is kind of frustrating. The good news is that if you download the patch, I believe you have the option to turn that off. Now, unfortunately for me, I did not find about that option to toggle the 6-axis functionality off much later in the game. So I basically played the most of the game, using the 6-axis controller for those Kai and cannonballs sections. So it was very frustrating. But just a heads up, if you guys get frustrating with the implementation, you can turn that off and use the regular stick on your controller. Now, as far as graphics, I do have to say, for being an early PlayStation 3 exclusive title, the graphics are pretty decent, or pretty impressive if you want to call it that. They're very colorful, they're very vibrant. There's a lot of like bloom in the outside areas, but the game has a very nice art direction, kind of like the setting of the game is in like an ancient like tribe or warrior type of setting that goes very well with the story of the game, and the graphics do a great justice in setting the right atmosphere for the game. So pretty decent graphics, especially on the facial animations when you have cutscenes and you watch the characters either talk or react to certain things. The facial animations are pretty impressive for being an early 7th generation game. And another fun thing is the performance in this game is not optimal. By performance, I mean frame rate. There are a lot of frame rate drops throughout the game, obviously, especially when you have a lot of enemies on the screen. But it takes me back to the early 7th generation, before the 7th generation, when the 360 and PS3 got announced. I don't know if you guys remember, but back then it was a big deal for some reason it was a big deal showing how many things on the screen you can have at the same time. And this game is kind of like, it was kind of funny because the game takes me back to the to that period of time where that was a big showcase. For example, there are parts in the game where there are battles going on in the background, and you see all these like little small soldiers or troops fighting each other on the background, and they're all animated each other. They obviously don't look as good as the main character models, but they do give this impression of thousands of people fighting in the background or far away from you. And it takes me back to that whole competition between Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, trying to showcase, hey, look, we can have all these animations in the background or running in the game, but it's odd enough. It's cool to see that, but at the same time, the frame rate takes a big dip when those things happen. So those particular sections kind of reminded me of the power struggle between companies and showcasing their hardware basically. The soundtrack, it's pretty good. There's a pretty decent voice acting and pretty decent acting as well, because in between the levels there are cutscenes where you have the characters are like kind of like movies where the characters talk to each other and things like that. And the voice acting is pretty good. The soundtrack is pretty good. So overall, I think Heavenly Sword is a pretty decent game. It's a pretty fun game that unfortunately is a little bit short. If I do have to say some negative things about the game, is that it's a little bit short. It takes about 6 to 8 hours to beat the game. Another negative thing is the fact that I found the boss fights to be quite challenging, especially the final boss. And if you guys have played and beat this game, you know exactly what I mean by that. And so the boss fights can be challenging, which can be good or bad, depending on how you want to tackle the game. The game is a little bit short, so that's on the negative side. And again, another negative thing is the 6-axis tacked on functionality, but then again, you can turn that off. And the positives are, it's a fun game with some variations in terms of gameplay that set this game apart a little bit from other hack and slash games. So I definitely say give this game a shot. Unfortunately, I was hoping Ninja Theory would kind of support this game via a like a pre-sequel or a sequel of the game. I know Ninja Theory is going to develop a game called Hellblade, which when they first revealed the trailer, I thought it was going to be Heavenly Sword. It just had that vibe and theme that was very similar to Heavenly Sword, but unfortunately it seems that like it's going to be a separate game. In my opinion, a kind of like a missed opportunity to expand the Heavenly Sword IP, because it's kind of odd. Even though there's only one game out there based on the series, it seems like Sony kind of made a push to make this a more of a mainstream exclusive to their PlayStation consoles, in the sense that you can play as Nariko on PlayStation Battle All-Stars Royale, which is the Smash Brothers clone that Sony came up with. And there's also DLC where you can download her stage on PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. And there's also a movie that Sony Pictures put out there. I know Chan's Doomwaves was the one that told me about, there's a movie out there for Heavenly Sword, but I have not watched it yet. In fact, I'm gonna check Netflix and see if it's up there. Hopefully it is. But if not, I'll definitely put that on my wish list, because I would like to see if the movie follows the video game, or if it's some kind of pre-sequel or sequel, whatever it is. And I believe there's also like an animated series, but I'm not really sure. I think I read that somewhere. I'm gonna have to double check on that. But it seems like Sony tried, or I don't know if they're gonna keep trying, but they definitely were interested in making Heavenly Sword some kind of like a mainstream occurrence in their consoles, such as their Killzone games, their Resistance game, their Little Big Planet games. So seems like it's a missed opportunity now, because Hellblade is gonna be a separate game, but who knows? Maybe they'll make another Heavenly Sword game. But for now, this is a very enjoyable early PlayStation 3 exclusive that went under the radar. It's very fun. Definitely not worth of day one price of $60. But nowadays you can get this game for like dirt cheap if you go to GameStop. So in that regard, it's highly recommended. It's a fun game. A little bit short but fun. So yeah, that's it for now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all later.